That one time you regret in Carolina, you free to talk about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Cam Newton's one of my favorite players I've ever been around.
Mhm.
Like the brutal honesty that he would share with me, the conversations every Tuesday, him and I would meet for an hour. We played Buffalo, and we called a play, and it was fourth and one. We went for it, and Cam threw the bubble out there. It was incomplete. And after the game, they asked me like what happened, and I wasn't even thinking about it with Cam. You know what I'm saying? I was thinking about it more like I was frustrated with us as coaches that we had that, and so we're thinking that's going to be a quarterback run, get a yard. They rotated the safeties, which changed the mic point. So Cam knew he was in trouble. So Cam's such a high level thinker. He knew it. So he threw the bubble out. So when they asked me afterwards, I said, we didn't call that to throw the bubble. Like, I didn't want to throw a bubble there.
Right.
The next day, I'm like, oh my gosh. Sometimes they beat up coaches. They beat up Zach Wilson after the Jets game. They beat up coaches with, I wish people knew what it felt like to go have your adrenaline at like 200, have your heart rate at like 190. And, you go walking in and some media person's like, here's this, they're going to ask you this, they're going to ask you this, they're going to ask you this. And you have about 8 seconds to get ready for the post-game press conference. And then that's one time for me, it just got away from me. And I didn't mean it. I apologized to Cam. He was great. I mean, he was ultimate professional coach. I got it. But I just hated it, because it came across like I was saying that about him. And there's no guy, like that guy was there at 11 o'clock at night. And that guy was there at 5 o'clock in the morning. Like Cam Newton was a grinder. And so that's the last thing I wanted to do was put him on the spot. And it just came out that way. And, it's hard to put the toothpaste back in, back in the bottle after that. But, it's just sometimes I let my frustration get me one time because I was mad because I thought we had a chance. And, we just made a bad play call probably.
Damn, dude.
Why don't you think it worked out in Carolina?
For me?
Yeah.
I think I took over kind of a tough situation. Like, there's a lot of Hall of Famers on that team that were leaving. And, right off the bat, they ended up letting Cam go and then Luke retired. And so I think if I look back, I would have just tried to do it faster. I would have tried to be a little more aggressive in free agency. I tried a big trade. But that wasn't really the plan. I'm kind of a loyal guy. Like if you tell me like, this is how I want to do it, then I'm going to do it that way. And I'm going to take responsibility for it. Even if maybe it's not always what I agree with. Like if we say, hey, we're doing it this way, we'll do it. So I just, I never got the offense going. Like we went from like the worst defense in the league the first year. We were second the second year. I thought the defense was coming on. And even this year, like I was proud the way they played down the stretch. Like they played well enough and Steve did a great job. But I knew that team. Like if you go back to my press conferences early, I said, guys, we just signed Baker. Like just give him a chance. We have to play. Like, a lot of teams start off 1-3, 1-4, and they kind of make a run. You saw that this year with some teams. So I just thought once they won a couple games, the pressure would come off. Once I thought we got past the 49ers, because that's a pretty good team. But, it wasn't for me. And it was one of those things where I had picked up so much steam. Like the fan base was pretty agitated about me at the end of last year. They were agitated about me. And once that happens, it's really hard to stop it. So, but yeah, there's all kinds of things. Like, what if we would have done this? What if we would have done that? But I kind of tried to do in the NFL what I did in college, which was like a slow build to have a really good team. Whoever gets that job, I think they have a pretty good roster. I mean, you got Brian Burns, DJ Moore, Derek Brown, the offensive line's pretty. He was drafted Icky last year. Unfortunately, Corbett tore his ACL, but Taylor Moton's under a long-term contract. I think like 20 to 22 starters are under contract next year. So I think it's a job that people should take because they have a pretty good roster there and a good culture in that locker room.
When you first get in there and you said be more aggressive in free agency and bigger trade, like how much of influence did you have in those things with the GM? Like I don't know how things work outside the Titans. I was only with the Titans, but it seemed like John Robinson, like he was running the show, and that's what it was. And I don't know how it usually works with a head coach and a GM.
I think so. I was the head coach. Basically, I was their head coach for 2 years and 5 games. I had 2 GMs in 2 years. So obviously you have one, and then you're trying to work with another one. I had Marty Herney, who's awesome, and Scott Fitter is as classy a dude as there is. There's not one like major trade we could have had that we didn't do. Like, oh, we should have pulled the trigger on it. More like looking back, it's like, hey, if you only have 2 years, man, let's go shoot our shot.
You could have been under the influence that you had time.
Yeah, So like for me, if you say like, hey, I just want this kind of built over 3 or 4 years, I'm gonna build over 3 or 4 years. If it's 2 years, it's 2 years. And so I would have probably maybe made a trade, maybe traded up for a quarterback or something like that. You go back over we tried a lot of things at quarterback. We traded for Sam. I was happy to see the way Sam played down the stretch. We traded for Baker. We brought Cam back. So we tried a bunch of different things. It just wasn't meant to be. Wasn't the right time. Maybe the right place. But I like the players there. I mean, I really do. Like I turn on the 49ers. I love watching Christian run wild. Like I love watching the Panthers play. Like I could watch Frankie Louvu play all day long. Man, he's one of the best playing football players I've ever been around. So I had good memories from it, but just didn't quite work out the way I thought it would.
What was it like seeing Christian McCaffrey go to the Niners?
So it's funny. He got traded. I texted him right away, like, because I got fired, and then all of a sudden a week later he gets traded. And yeah, and he was like, hey, he said, hey, coach,
Christian McCaffrey out of
here. So he called me. He's like, I'll call you right back. I said, don't call me. You got enough going on. I said, just if you ever need me, call me. And he's like, he's just such a great dude, man. So the next day, my wife and son are at the airport. They're getting ready to fly up to Penn State. It's my alma mater, and there was a whiteout, and the AD there is a good friend of mine. So we just wanted my son, he wanted to go to college visit, just get him away. So they're at the airport. I'm going to babysit the 9 and 7-year-old. I'm daddy for the weekend, and they're like the FBO, and Christian comes walking in, and my son sees him. Christian just got traded. He's getting ready to go to fly to San Francisco. He turns, makes a left, walks over, hugs my wife, and I'll just, my wife is one of those wives, like, even in the NFL, she would have a different position group over every Thursday night during the season. Never mandatory, not like, hey, we need you. Like DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, it was like 12:15 at night. She's like, guys, you have to leave. It's time to go. Like, those guys would come over, we would kick it, hang out. So she felt part of the team. And so I get fired. She doesn't get to see anyone. Like, there's no closure for her even.
Yeah, she's losing friends.
Yeah. So Christian walks up, hugs her, hugs Bryant, and says some things. I'll keep, just said some really positive things to them. They kind of needed that. And that's who he is, man. So, like, when I see what he's doing right now, I'm fired up. I'm fired up for him because he deserves this opportunity. He got run a lot. His last year at Stanford, his first couple of years in the NFL, like, his percentage of carries, was elite. So unfortunately, during my time, he had some injuries. I feel like though his body rested, and he didn't make the Pro Bowl this year. I told him, I said, well, just settle for being the Super Bowl MVP. How about that?
Yeah.
Like, I think he could.
And my first overall draft pick in the fantasy.
Nice.
Yeah, that was a smart move by me.
Dude, when we played the Panthers, it was always like, you stop him, you win the game. Like, he was like a ridiculous percentage of touches, like running and catching the ball.
No doubt.
Guy's elite.
Yeah.
Truly elite.
Yeah, he is.